Look, handling conflict at the board table specifically is a really important skill as the general counsel. And that is, one of the expectations that the rest of the board and, the executives are expecting from you, that you are in that role of, being a mediator and being a trusted advisor. I would always recommend that before you go into a board meeting, you are as well advised and well informed, because you should be prepared and already know from the board papers what issues of conflict are likely to arise at the board meeting. And you should have a strategy for dealing with those issues before. And that may be that you are having some pre-discussions with either the executives or the board members on the relevant issues, because no one in a board meeting likes surprises or for information to come up that's very difficult and very challenging to respond to. So I think if you are aware that there's going to be some challenging discussions, particularly if someone is going to be questioned antagonistically and you're aware that there's some antagonism in the room on a commercial decision, particularly where the relevant legal position may not be entirely clear, just to be aware that that conflict is going to rise and be prepared for it. So if you have had relevant discussions beforehand with some of the key stakeholders, to understand their commercial objectives and the parameters around the decision-making framework, but also so you can also help them understand what is the legal position. And if the legal position is unclear, it might be an area of regulatory change or an area where there's not a determinative decision and you're having to make judgments of commercial risk within those legal frameworks. I think it's important that you've been able to express your legal advice and views with those people before the board meeting. So they're aware of what your views will be at the meeting, and that helps them prepare for the meeting as well. So being prepared, having those pre-discussions can actually soften the conflict as and when it arises at the board meeting. It assists the stakeholders involved in the conflict to have a better understanding of where your position is on those legal issues and risk. And obviously playing a straight bat, in your prior discussions is essential. As we did talk about before, your role is to build that arm's length trusted advisor relationship, rather than playing favourites or currying favours. And people do expect that from you as the general counsel. So as I said, if relevant stakeholders are aware of your view and the legal position that you're going to be putting forth at the board meeting, it will lead to a more balanced discussion on the relevant issues in the meeting. And it comes back to what I was talking about before. It's really key to have very strong relationships and that you can demonstrably show in a board meeting that you have those relationships across each of the C-suite with the CEO, the CRO, the CCO, COO, the CIO, etc. If you can demonstrate that you have an understanding of all of the views of each executive function and how they all interrelate and how they can conflict from time to time, because of each of these functions are driving their own purpose and objectives. But that interaction and understanding of the integration of conflict between risk, compliance, operations, legal, data, technology in the business delivery context, that's going to be really helpful to you to help manage these conflicts. And also to understand how conflicts can arise when you are reading the board papers yourself. But look, there can be other conflicts between executives and non-executive or independent directors. And sometimes those are conflicts which may not be known before entering the board meeting. You may yourself be surprised at the views expressed by a non-executive director, for example, that you didn't see coming. And that comes back to, I think, what Stephanie was saying is you have to be the steady hand. If there is a surprise in the meeting, if there is conflict that's brought up that wasn't expected, you really do need to tread that tightrope between being the commercial pragmatic advisor on the commercial, objective side, but also being the independent, legally privileged advisor as well, and really understanding how to manage the risks when there are some really difficult legal questions, knowing when to use, you know, confidentiality, privilege, you know, terms such as without prejudice, or even knowing when to pause the meeting and to say, okay, we need to have a break here. We'll all have a 5-minute break and we'll reset. And that might give the opportunity to have some out of board meeting discussions on a really, really difficult issue. So I think, you know, be fair and honest in your assessments. If you need time to consider issues, use it, as I said, as a break, because that can sort of bring the heat a little bit out of the conflict situation. It allows people to have a good think about the issues and to come back and regroup. But, you know, as the GC, you are the steady hand, and, you know, your role is to provide independent advice in a very measured and a very calm way.